Shalom. I'm Nama Ru. This is my husband, Rabbi David Ru. And we are talking about Shmita and how the land becomes ownerless during the 7th year of the 7-year cycle for Jews living in the traditional borders of the Holy Land. Can you tell us some more, continuing from last shur?
Well, we were in the middle of the Minchas and couldn't get to the end. Remember, the Minchas is a commentary on the Sefer Hinokh, which was written about 700 years ago as a bar mitzvah present, explaining every mitzvah in the parsha, every week's parsha in order. So the Minchas continues. Nirאה dSober b'zman hazeh af b'zman ba'yisheni eini noheg min Torah. It appears to us that the Sefer Hinokh holds that in our times, and even in the Second Temple times, that Shmita is not from Torah law, kmo Yovel, like the Jubilee. Noheg rak b'zman shekol yosbia. Only at the time that all of its inhabitants are living in there. The majority of the Jews are in Eretz Israel. Umeshgalu shevet Ruvain v'Gad, and when the tribes of Ruvain and Gad were already exiled because they were whole shvatim, batlu hayovlos. Torah. The Yovel no longer existed from Torah law. Ian b'Shas b'Rambam, Perak Dalet Melech Shmita, looking throughout various places in Shas, and in the Rambam, the 4th parak of Hilchos Shmita, we call Makom, and nonetheless, Kasav Dnira Divrei Harambam, the Shmita Noheg B'zman Hazeh min Torah. Nonetheless, the Rambam seems to write that Shmita is from Torah law in our time. Find Mishnah Melech Sham, look at the Mishnah Melech there. Lekman Pashas Bahar Yivor Gam Ishmita Karka Talui Biyobel. There we will look and see whether the resting of the land is dependent upon the Jubilee year or not. So we see there are many different issues involved with this. Now, we have the basic question, the basic debate between the Beis Yosef and the Mabit was whether I have to declare my land ownerless or is it automatically ownerless? The king made it ownerless. God made it ownerless. So, la halacha, Ramesha Paskind in the Tshuva, mashma shabal hasadeh mechuyav lahafkir b'pei. It is apparent to us that the owner of the field has to orally say that he is making it ownerless. Af but lo amiraso shemafkir namihu hefkir. Even though if he doesn't say it, it will be ownerless. So he's saying one should do what the Beis Yosef says, but essentially if one doesn't, nonetheless it's ownerless, like the Mabit said. Deken mashma lashon harambam, because this is how the Rambam appears, Perak Dalet Mishmita Halacha Chaf Dalet, the 4th chapter of in Hilchos Shmita, the 24th Halacha. Shkasav mitzvazasi lahashmit, where he says there's a positive commandment to end the ownership. Kol mash totzia aretz b'shvis, everything that comes out of the land in the Shmita year. Shnamar ve'ashmis tishmatena v'netashta, and in the sabbatical year everything will be abandoned and ownerless. Shemash mitzarich lahafkir b'pei, and it appears from this that one would have to declare it ownerless by his own statement. And in fact, this is also the opinion of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. I have to say one thing about this. The produce of the land is ownerless. The trees, for instance, if someone owns an orchard, are not ownerless. If they were ownerless, I could go down and cut down a tree, right? Here's a cherry orchard here, and I love doing carpentry with cherry wood. So, hey, I can go in and cut down 20 cherry trees and have a ton of cherry wood. I can't do that. The trees are still his. It's the fruit that's being made ownerless.
The land?
The produce of the land.
Okay.
And perhaps a field that doesn't, but certainly trees are not ownerless. So the Chazon Ish looks at this in a different way. And the Chazon Ish writes, nonetheless, one has to look more into the matter of ownerlessness. It's not an issue of whether the fruit is mutter to eat or prohibited to eat. Ela inyan hafkas balus. It's whether I express ownership over it. Yesh lomar, kevan she'ein hanachri b'mitzvos, ein peros av hefker. And because a non-Jew has no mitzvah to declare his fruit ownerless, or any mitzvah for that matter, therefore his fruit isn't hefker, ownerless. Shazos omeris, devadai rachmana afgare. It's clear that God declared it ownerless. Nonetheless, it's only Jewish fruit that's ownerless and not non-Jewish fruit. The mitzvah of Shmita, the sanctity of fruit on Shmita, is a mitzvah between Yisrael, between a Jew, and the fruit. Shapi huzuru Yisrael perosh gadlu baretz. Therefore, all Jews are warned, are given this mitzvah of the sanctity of all fruit that's grown in the land of Israel. Af bereshus nochri, even if it's under a non-Jew's control. Aval din hefker eino ben Yisrael leperos, ele ben habalim luzuz lasso. But ownerlessness isn't between me and the fruit. It's between one Jew and another Jew. It's between different people, not between me and a non-Jew. Ubezei im habalim nochri. Therefore, if the owners are non-Jews, paka din zeh, then this halacha doesn't apply. Bezei das maranzal, and this is the opinion of the Beis Yosef. Ubezei ein rayos machrios, and in this there's no clear proof to it one way or another. Ela sheyesh makom lomar de perosh shvis beturim mitzad atzman. One can say in terms of trumas and meisers that simply because it's shvis, there's no trumas and meisers this year. V'lo machmas hefker, not because they were made ownerless. V'gam b'zei ein hadavar muchra, and then also in this you can't prove anything. So it's very interesting here that both the Peyos Shulchan, who paskins like the Beis Yosef concerning the sanctity of fruit of a non-Jew, that it's not holy, and the Chazon Ish, who paskins like the Mebit, that it is holy. In terms of separating Trumas and Meisers, both of them say, if you receive fruit and vegetables from a non-Jew and Shmita, you should separate Trumas and Meisers either mi'ikar hadin, according to the Peyos Shulchan and Beis Yosef, or l'chumra, according to the Chazon Ish, because he says that neither the arguments of the Beis Yosef or the Mebit are provable, and if I can't prove it, and then if the Mebit is correct, if the Mebit is correct, then there's sanctity of Shmita on their produce, and I don't have to separate Shmita. But if the Beis Yosef is correct, and there's no sanctity of Shmita on their produce, then I would have to separate Trumas and Meisers on it. Now, if you have to separate Trumas and Meisers, it's not clear whether you separate Meiser Ani or Meiser Sheni. Meiser Ani goes to the poor, Meiser Sheni goes to be consumed in Yerushalayim. So concerning the land immediately adjacent to Eretz Yisrael, the Chachamim declared that even though from Torah law it doesn't have to separate Trumas and Meisers, during Shmita they do have to separate Trumas and Meisers. Rabbinically, they have to always separate Trumas and Meisers, but even on Shmita they have to separate Trumas and Meisers because they don't have Shmita. And there is an argument: should it be like the majority of the years and be Meiser Sheni, the second tithe they have to take up and consume in Yerushalayim, or should it be Meiser Ani, even though it's 2 years Meiser Sheni, 1 year Meiser Ani, 2 years Meiser Sheni, 1 year Meiser Ani. So if we would continue the cycle, it should be Meiser Sheni. The Chachamim said we declare that should be Meiser Ani, poor person's tithe, so that the poor in Eretz Yisrael can rely on this food during Shmita when there isn't Lekat Shechacha and Peah. Even though they can go out and gather what they can gather, but they may not, have all the time to do that and so on. So it would seem that one should separate also here Meiser Ani. However, if you use one of the standard nusachos like the Rabbinical Council of Chicago Rabbinical Council and so on, many of these, since you're often unaware of when something is harvested or when the chanata of something, because the produce is often kept for several years, the nusach says it's either Meiser Sheni or Meiser Ani, whichever is necessary. So you can certainly use that type of nusach here to separate the Trumas and Meisers on this. This is the end, sort of this thing. Next week, we get to discuss private gardens, whether you can lock up your garden on Shmita or whether you have to let people in. and what if you can lock it up, what you can do with the peiros in your garden,
Peiros?
fruits, the produce of the garden, and so on. And that will be in the next year.
Yeah. If you have a garden, you're going to want to know.